My parents ignored me for years. At Christmas dinner, I casually said, I sold my company. Your little, worthless business? For how much? My brother laughed. Me, $170 million. His jaw fell. Mom turned pale. My name is Chloe Carter. I'm 28 years old, and my family has treated me like background noise for as long as I can remember. To them, I was the responsible one, the one who would be fine no matter what, which really meant they never had to pay attention to me. They saved all the attention, all the praise, all the "we're so proud of you" speeches from my older brother and his big, shiny life. I got the occasional "that's nice, honey" tossed over a shoulder while they refreshed the group chat to see his latest win. This Christmas was supposed to be about him again. My mom called it a little celebration for your brother's big promotion, like I was just extra seating at his party. They had no idea that a few weeks earlier I'd wired more money into my bank account than my entire family had seen in their lives combined. No idea that my little side project, the one they rolled their eyes at, the one they called a distraction from a real career, had turned into a company someone paid $170 million for. I sat at that table, staring at the carved ham and the mismatched holiday plates, listening to them hype him up like always, feeling that old familiar burn in my chest. Then my brother made one snide comment too many about my tiny nurses and my cute little business. I looked him dead in the eye and said, as casually as I could, I sold my company. He smirked and asked, your little worthless business? For how much? I said, $170 million. His jaw actually dropped. My mom went pale. My dad's fork slipped out of his hand and clattered against the plate. What happened after that changed our family forever. And not in the warm, fuzzy Christmas movie way they like to pretend we are. Before I tell you what my brother said next and what I did after I walked away from that table, do me a favor, drop a comment with what time it is for you right now and where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these messy family stories can travel. Growing up as Chloe Carter meant learning early that love in my house came with a ranking system, and I was never in first place. I was the kid who brought home science fair ribbons and straight A's in biology. My older brother was the one who scored winning touchdowns and got his name announced over the loudspeaker. Guess which one my parents framed on the wall? They called me low maintenance like it was a compliment. Chloe doesn't need all that fuss, my mom would say, adjusting my brother's tie for the third time before his award ceremonies. When I got into a competitive nursing program on a scholarship, my dad said, "That's great, honey. Nurses are helpful." Then immediately turned to ask my brother Ryan how his business major was going. Like my life was a warm-up act for the real show. The irony is being ignored made me dangerous. While they were glued to Ryan's highlight reel, I was learning how to read EKGs, start 4S, and think clearly while someone was coding in front of me. I took a job as a night shift ER nurse, straight out of school, and what nobody in my family understood was how much chaos I handled every single night. We stabilized car crash victims, stroke patients, overdose cases. I made calls at 3 a.m. That meant the difference between someone waking up or never waking up again. And in the pockets of time between codes and charting when other nurses scrolled their phones, I sketched out an idea on the back of scrap paper. I kept seeing the same problems over and over: chaotic staffing, missed handoffs, dangerous delays because no one had a clear picture of who was where and what was happening. So, with the help of a programmer friend from school, Maya Lopez, I started building a platform we called PulseLink, a real-time coordination system for emergency departments. At first it was just a rough prototype. I dragged myself home at 7 a.m., shower, crash for a few hours, then wake up, chug coffee, and hop on calls with Maya. We debug issues while my neighbors were making dinner, then I'd head back to the hospital for another 12-hour shift. My family knew exactly 1% of this. To them, I was still working nights, which translated in my mom's head to still not doing anything worth posting on Facebook, but they knew every single detail of Ryan's life. He became an investment analyst, then a future partner at his firm, then the proud owner of a condo our parents helped him pay for. They cashed out part of their retirement to help with his down payment and called it supporting his future. When I asked if they could co-sign a small line of credit so Maya and I could quit our second jobs and focus on PulseLink, my dad laughed and said, "Sweetheart, apps are a fad, be realistic. Nursing is your backup plan, remember? Don't risk that on some tech fantasy." Funny how my steady, life-saving job was a backup plan when it came to me, but Ryan's spreadsheets were visionary. The night everything changed, I was on break in the staff lounge, half asleep on a plastic chair with my phone face down on my lap. When I finally checked it, I had 3 missed calls from an unknown number and 1 from Maya, plus a text in all caps. "Answer your phone. We got it." I stepped into the supply closet, heart pounding, and called her back. She was crying and laughing at the same time. The hospital board we'd been pitching to for months had finally agreed to roll out PulseLink as a pilot, and a medical software company we'd been talking to in San Francisco wanted to acquire us outright. The number they mentioned made my knees buckle. It didn't feel real. I finished my shift in a daze, then spent the next week juggling contract calls, NDAs, and lawyers in between triaging patients. While my parents sent me a flyer for Ryan's promotion party at the firm, literally a digital invitation in the family group chat with a champagne emoji, and the words, "So proud of you, Ryan," I was in a glass conference room downtown, signing away a company I had built on energy drinks and pure stubbornness. When the wire finally hit, $170 million, minus legal fees and taxes and the investor slice, there was still more money left than I knew what to do with. I stared at my banking app like it might glitch and disappear. I cried in my car, then went to work that night like nothing had happened, because people still needed their vitals checked and meds passed. I didn't tell my parents, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. They'd minimize it, misunderstand it, or turn it into a story about how they always knew I'd do great things. Even though they had never asked a single real question, when my mom called a week before Christmas and said, "We're doing a special dinner this year for your brother's promotion. You can make it, right?" I almost laughed. She didn't say for the family or for the holidays. She said, "For your brother." And that's when the idea really solidified. I wasn't going to show up in designer clothes or drop hints like I was begging for attention. I was going to sit at that table, listen to them talk about him like he walked on water. And when he made one of his usual jabs at my little nurse life, I'd drop the number that would split their reality open. Not to be petty. Okay. Maybe a little petty, but mostly because I was tired of being erased in my own family's story. Christmas Day, I parked my same old beat-up Honda at the curb in front of my parents' house. And that alone helped my plan. No flashy car, no luxury handbag, nothing that screamed multi-millionaire. Just me in black jeans, a soft green sweater, and the same winter coat I'd had since nursing school. The house looked exactly the same as every other holiday. Lights tangled along the gutters, a plastic reindeer leaning slightly to one side, wreath on the door with a faded red bow. Inside, I could already hear my mother's laugh over the music, and my dad's deep voice booming about something. I pressed my thumb against the cool metal of the doorknob and forced myself to inhale slowly. This wasn't just about money. This was about walking into the same battlefield I'd grown up on and refusing to play the same role. Chloe, finally, my mom, Linda, swooped in first, smelling like cinnamon and perfume. She gave me a quick hug, then pulled back to smooth my hair like I was 8. "You look tired. Are you still doing those crazy night shifts? I keep telling you, honey, you should find something calmer. You don't want to burn out before you're 30. Good to see you too, Mom," I said, stepping out of my boots. "Yeah, still nights. Somebody's got to keep people alive while you're sleeping." She tutted like I'd made a dramatic joke and turned away before I even finished speaking. "Your brother's already here," she called over her shoulder. "He brought that artisanal wine. So thoughtful. We're going to open it with dinner." I followed her into the living room, and sure enough, there was Ryan Carter, standing in the middle of it like he owned the place. Perfect hair, expensive watch, slim-fit dress shirt rolled at the sleeves. He was mid-story, some tale about his boss pulling him aside in the hallway to talk about big future plans. My dad, Paul, sat in his recliner, hanging on every word. "Clow." Ryan finally noticed me and grinned, walking over with his glass in hand. "You made it. I know nights can be rough. Did they finally let you out of the hospital dungeon?" "We don't actually chain patients to the walls anymore, but yeah, they did," I said dryly. He laughed like he thought he was charming. "How's the, what was it, data thing you were messing around with? That app?" "It's been busy," I said, keeping my face neutral. "We've had a lot going on." "Well, don't let it distract you from your real work," my dad chimed in, gesturing vaguely. nursing is a solid job. Practical. And you've always been our practical kid, right? The one we don't have to worry about. Ryan's got a lot riding on him with that firm. Yeah, Ryan added, clinking his glass lightly against Dad's. High stakes. Big dollars. They literally said the words future partner in front of the whole team. My mom clasped her hands at her chest. We're just so proud of you, sweetheart. Tonight is all about celebrating you. I stood there, invisible, the way I'd been my entire life. There it was again. We don't have to worry about you. It sounded nice, but what it really meant was, we don't think about you. I moved into the kitchen to help, not because I felt like it, but because it gave my hands something to do other than shake. As I chopped vegetables and stirred sauces, the familiar rhythm of holiday cooking worked like a metronome to calm me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Maya. Maya, you okay? Maya. Remember, they don't decide your value. You do. I smiled despite myself and typed back. Showtime soon. When we finally sat at the dining table, the seating arrangement said everything. Ryan smacked in the middle on one side, flanked by my parents like he was the guest of honor at some gala. They'd put me at the far end near the sideboard, an easy reach for passing dishes and taking plates to the sink. A built-in waitress, classic. As they started pouring wine, my dad lifted his glass. To Ryan, he said, eyes shining. To his promotion, his hard work, and everything he's going to accomplish. We couldn't be prouder. To Ryan, my mom echoed. Our star. I raised my glass too, partly because it would have been weird not to, partly because I wanted them lulled into their usual script. Ryan smirked at me as he took a sip. A small, smug lift of his mouth that said he knew exactly where he sat in the family food chain. So Chloe, he said, leaning back like a talk show host tossing a bone to a guest, still pulling double shifts and eating stale vending machine snacks? You gotta get out of that grind, little sis. Maybe someday I'll get you an interview at my firm. He said it half joking, but there was a real condescension under it. The same tone he'd used when he once told me, if that app of yours ever makes a buck, I'll buy you something nice, like a real purse. My chest tightened, but this time, instead of swallowing it, I let the feeling sharpen me. I glanced at the ham, the mashed potatoes, the flickering candle in the center of the table. I thought about every time they'd brushed past me to get to him. Every time they'd turned my milestones into footnotes to his achievements, and I decided I was done. I didn't blurt it out in anger. That would have been too easy for them to dismiss as Chloe being emotional. I waited. I let them run through their usual loops, Ryan's promotion, the important people at his firm, the huge clients, whose names they dropped even though they barely understood what he did. I added little neutral comments, the kind nurses use when we're assessing a patient. Oh wow, and that's big, and how are you feeling about that? All while my mind was quietly counting off beats, like a conductor waiting to cue the orchestra. The opening came when my mom turned to me with the polite interest people reserved for small talk. So honey, what about you? She asked, topping off Ryan's glass before mine. Same hospital, same, what do you call it, ward? I said. Same ER, but a lot has changed this year. My dad gave a vague nod. Well, as long as you're stable, that's what matters. God knows the world needs good nurses. My brother snorted softly. Yeah, and she's got that little app thing, remember? The one she keeps experimenting with. He even did air quotes. How's that going? Still asking the universe to manifest $1 million? The table chuckled. It hurt, but it also helped. They were serving me the moment on a silver platter. I set my fork down gently so the sound wouldn't distract from what I was about to say. Actually, I replied, keeping my voice almost bored. I'm not manifesting $1 million anymore. Ryan cocked his head. Oh, you give up on your little fantasy? No, I said, meeting his eyes. I sold my company. The words landed like a glass shattering on tile. The room didn't go silent all at once. It was more like the laughter died in stages, like people realized simultaneously that this wasn't a joke. My mom's smile froze. My dad blinked twice. Ryan frowned like he'd misheard me. You. What? He said. I sold my company. I repeated. PulseLink, the ER coordination platform I've been building the last few years. We closed the deal 3 weeks ago. His frown turned into a smirk, relieved. Okay. Miss CEO, and how much did your little worthless business go for? The word worthless had history. He'd thrown it at me in a fight last Thanksgiving when I told him I didn't have extra cash to help with a second investment he wanted to make. You're a nurse, Chloe? You make okay money, but you're not exactly swimming in it. That app is worthless until proven otherwise. I'd let it slide then, not this time. I took a sip of water, kept my hands steady, and said, $170 million. Ryan laughed too loud. Get out of here. She's joking. My mom said quickly, like she needed to reassert control of the narrative. That's not funny, Chloe. Money talk is tacky. I'm not joking. I replied, $170 million. A healthcare software company in San Francisco acquired PulseLink. We signed at the beginning of the month. I've got a multi-year consulting role and equity in their parent company. After taxes and investor payouts, I'm fine. I watched the color drain from my mom's face like someone had pulled a plug. My dad's jaw slackened. He looked at me the way patients look at a monitor when the numbers don't match how they feel. Confused, disoriented. Ryan's laughter sputtered out. You're lying, he said. You don't just sell things for that much money. You still drive that crap car. You still live in that apartment with the squeaky steps. If you had that kind of money, we'd know. Why? I asked, tilting my head. You've never asked about my work before. You barely listen when I talk about my patients, let alone my company. You assumed you knew my whole life because you knew my job title. You know the hours I work, but you don't know what I've built with them. My mom clutched her napkin. Chloe, sweetheart. If this is some kind of joke to ruin your brother's celebration, I'm not trying to ruin anything. I cut in, my patience thinning. I'm sharing my news at a family dinner. That's what this is, right? Family? My dad cleared his throat, grasping for something solid. If this is true, he said slowly. Why didn't you tell us? Why wouldn't you come to us first? That one actually made me laugh. A short, bitter sound. Come to you first. Like when I asked you to co-sign a tiny line of credit, and you told me to be realistic? Like when I tried to explain what PulseLink did, and you said you didn't understand that tech stuff, and changed the subject back to Ryan's quarterly bonus. The room went still. Ryan's eyes flicked between my parents and me, something like panic starting to flicker in them. He was used to being the main character here. Suddenly, he wasn't. Okay, he said, forcing a chuckle. Let's say this is real. Show us. Show me your account. Show me. Something. He sounded almost frantic. Normally, I'd hate the idea of pulling out my phone and proving my worth with numbers, but in this moment, I knew exactly what I was doing. I opened my banking app under the table, pulled up one of the accounts, and set the phone face up between us. I didn't show all of it, just enough. Enough zeros to make my dad suck in a breath and my mom's hand fly to her mouth. Enough for Ryan's eyes to widen, then narrow, like he was trying to do complicated math in his head. Math that ended with one conclusion. He wasn't the most successful child anymore. Holy, Ryan muttered, cutting himself off only because our mom gave him the look she reserves for bad language and spilled gravy. He stared at the screen like he could will the numbers to change. This doesn't make sense. You? How? That one little word said everything. You. The girl they didn't have to worry about. The nurse who worked nights and wore sensible shoes. The sibling who sat quietly and clapped on command while they toasted Ryan's every move. It's not that complicated, I said. I saw a problem at work. I built something to fix it. And people in positions of power saw the value. They paid accordingly. But you never said anything. My mom whispered, not a word. We're your parents. We should have known. Should you? I asked. Because every time I tried to talk about PulseLink, you talked over me. I'd try to explain, and you'd say, that's nice, honey. Then ask Ryan how his big meeting went. You knew every detail of his job. But you can't even tell me the name of the hospital where I work without thinking for a second. My dad bristled. Now hold on. We've supported you. We've always been proud of you. I leaned forward. The years of swallowed words finally clawing their way out. You supported Ryan. You dipped into your retirement to help with his condo. You co-signed on his first car. When he tanked that can't-miss investment 2 years ago, you called it a learning experience. When I asked for a fraction of that support, you told me I was being reckless. Ryan's face flushed. That's not fair, he snapped. They knew I had real prospects. You were just playing with code on your laptop. You mean the code you laughed at when I showed you the early dashboard? I asked. The one you said looked like a school project before you took a photo and sent it to your friends as a joke? He opened his mouth, then shut it. The memory clearly hit. Our mom looked back and forth between us, shaken. We didn't know, she murmured. We had no idea it was serious. Why didn't you push harder? Make us listen. There it was. The blame turned back on me. Classic. Because I was tired, I said quietly. Tired of begging my own parents to treat me like more than an accessory to Ryan's success story. Tired of explaining my life to people who'd already decided who I was. The room felt tight. The air hot despite the snow outside. My dad set his fork down, forgotten. Mel. What now? He asked, his voice oddly small. You're rich. You don't need us. I've never needed you for money, I said. I needed you to care. I needed you to look at me and see more than someone who would be fine no matter what. Ryan suddenly pushed back his chair, the legs scraping harshly on the floor. So what? You came here to flex, he demanded. To humiliate me? To make them feel guilty? You couldn't just tell us like a normal person. You had to do it at my celebration dinner. You mean the Christmas dinner my parents renamed for your promotion? I shot back. The one they introduced to me as your brother's big night? If this is really just about family and not about worshiping you, why does my success feel like an attack? He glared at me, jaw clenched. You always played the victim. He said, you never asked for more. You never said you wanted the spotlight. I didn't want the spotlight. I answered. I wanted room to exist. There's a difference. Another heavy silence fell. I could tell my parents were trying to catch up, mentally rewriting years of family history on the fly. That was their problem, not mine. I wasn't here to babysit their guilt. I was here to finally, fully, step out of the box they'd shoved me into. I took my phone back and locked it. I didn't come here to beg for validation, I said, pushing my chair back. I came here to tell you who I am now. Whether you can handle that is up to you. As I stood, my mom reached for my wrist. Chloe, wait, she pleaded. We just need time. This is a lot. I've given you 28 years, I replied. Time isn't the issue. I walked away from that table, past the tree and the stockings with our names on them, past the family photos lining the hall, most of them featuring Ryan front and center, me blurred at the edges. In the hallway mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself, calm, not shattered. It surprised me. I wasn't the desperate girl I'd been at 16, waiting for her parents to look up from the bleachers and notice her too. I was a woman who had built something world-changing while they weren't looking. Whether they ever caught up was no longer life or death for me. I didn't get far before the storm hit. Chloe. Ryan's voice followed me down the hallway, sharp and raw in a way I wasn't used to hearing. I turned just as he caught up. His usual polished composure cracked. You can't just drop a bomb like that and walk out. Watch me, I said. I've spent my whole life swallowing things so you didn't feel threatened. Threatened? He barked out a laugh that had no humor in it. You think I'm threatened by you? You are now, I said. We stared at each other, the years of unspoken competition suddenly very, very spoken. My parents hovered a few feet behind him, not quite close enough to intervene, not quite distant enough to pretend they weren't involved. You don't understand what you've done, Ryan said, shifting tactics. You made me look like an idiot back there. You know my boss is friends with Dad on Facebook. What happens when this gets out? When people hear my little sister built a company worth that much and I didn't even know? I look like a joke. There it was. Not concern for me, not curiosity about my work, just panic about his image. Your biggest fear is looking stupid, I said. My biggest fear used to be dying in a hallway because nobody listened when I said I wasn't okay. That's the difference between us. My dad bristled. Now that's uncalled for. We've always cared about you. You cared about the version of me that didn't make you uncomfortable. I replied, the quiet nurse, the helper, The good listener. You had a script for her. You don't have a script for this version. My mom stepped closer, wringing her hands. We're trying to understand. We're trying to be happy for you. But it hurts, Chloe. It hurts that you didn't trust us with this. That you shut us out. I swallowed, choosing my next words carefully. You weren't shut out. You walked out. Every time you interrupted me to ask Ryan another question. Every time you forgot my schedule but memorized his. Every time you told me to be happy for your brother when I was hurting. You think being ignored doesn't leave scars? Ryan scoffed. This is ridiculous. You're acting like you were abused or something. You had a roof over your head. Food, a good school. You had every advantage. Except being seen, I said quietly. Except being chosen. The hallway felt too small. The walls too close. For a second, I considered softening. Taking it back. Making a joke to ease the tension. That old reflex was strong. But then I remembered all the nights I spent collapsing into bed. Eyes burning from staring at a screen after 12 hours on my feet. Building something no one in this house believed in. That girl deserved better than me backing down now. Here's what's going to happen, I said, surprising even myself with how steady I sounded. I'm going to leave. You're going to sit with this. Maybe you're going to get angry and complain to each other about how ungrateful I am. Maybe you're going to feel guilty. Maybe you're going to try to pretend nothing happened. That's your call. But from now on, if you want access to my life, not my money, my life, it will be on different terms. My dad frowned. What terms? You stop comparing me to Ryan, I said. You stop treating my accomplishments like accidents. You stop asking me for favors you would never expect from him. And you apologize, not just for tonight, for the last 20 years. Ryan threw his hands up. Apologize? For what? Being successful? No, I answered. For stepping on me to feel taller. For laughing at my work when you didn't understand it. For using me as proof that you were the special one. He flinched at that just slightly. You don't know what it's like to be under pressure all the time, he muttered. To have everyone counting on you to make it. You're right, I said. I don't know what it's like to have people believe in me before I prove anything. I only know what it's like to patch people up all night, and then pour my last brain cells into building something, while the people who were supposed to love me most called it a gamble. We didn't have the same childhood even though we grew up in the same house. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my mom did something I honestly didn't expect. She started crying. Not the performative tears she'd sometimes use to shut down conflict, but the messy kind. The kind that made her reach for the wall like she needed support. We did this, she said to my dad, voice cracking. We made them like this. Pitted them against each other without even noticing. I thought we were just encouraging him because he needed it. I thought she was fine. My dad's shoulders slumped. The fight draining out of him. We were wrong, he said quietly. We were wrong. And we can't undo it. Ryan looked between them. Then at me. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Fear, not of me, but of losing this version of his life where he was always the chosen one. So what? He asked hoarsely. You cut us off. You disappear into your rich people world and forget we exist. I shook my head. No, I said. I build a world where I exist. Whether you see me or not. You can be part of it if you're willing to do the work. If not, I'll be okay. For the first time. I truly know that. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door. My mom reached for me and then stopped. Like she knew empty promises wouldn't work this time. We'll call you, she said weakly, when we've thought about what to say. Take your time, I replied. Just don't call me to ask for money. Ryan's cheeks reddened. I never. You already hinted. I cut in. You asked how this would look for you at work. You're scared your boss will find out your baby sister is more successful than you on paper. Newsflash. That's not my problem. You have your own path to walk. I stepped outside into the icy air. The cold biting but clean. Behind me, the muffled sounds of my family arguing rose and fell. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But under the hurt there was something else blooming, a strange, fierce peace. For once, I hadn't folded myself into a smaller shape to fit their expectations. I walked to my car feeling like my spine was made of steel. In the weeks after Christmas, my family did exactly what I expected. They went quiet. No group chats. No Happy New Year text. No memes from my mom. At first, the silence felt like standing in a room after a fire, smelling smoke and not sure what was still standing. I threw myself into my new reality instead. There were meetings with the acquiring company, strategy sessions about how PulseLink would scale, visits to other hospitals where nurses lit up when they saw how much easier their workflow became. For the first time, my daily conversations were with people who saw my brain first, not my role in a family hierarchy. I also did something that would have terrified the old me. I booked therapy, not because I was broken, but because I was tired of dragging old wounds into new rooms. A lot of those sessions were about my parents, about how being the ignored kid can feel easier than being the problem kid. But it still eats you alive slowly. About how favoritism isn't just unfair, it's a form of emotional neglect for everyone involved. My therapist said something that stuck with me. When a family chooses a golden child, they don't just hurt the scapegoat or the invisible kid. They also set the golden child up to crash when the world doesn't treat them the same way. I didn't fully understand what she meant until the second week of January when Ryan called. I stared at his name, flashing on my phone for a long moment before answering. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Hey," he replied. He sounded smaller. "Can you talk?" "A little," I said. "What's up?" There was a pause, then a bitter laugh. "You know how I said your little show at dinner would make me look stupid at work?" "I remember," I said. "You were very concerned about that." "Yeah, well," he said, "turns out I did a pretty good job of that all by myself." He explained haltingly that he'd been riding high on his promotion, the one my parents had basically thrown a holiday in honor of, and had gotten sloppy. He'd used client names in a bar where he shouldn't have. He'd sent an email with the wrong attachment. He'd made a few bad calls trying to impress a senior partner. Nothing illegal, but enough to make the higher-ups nervous. "They said I've gotten distracted," he finished, "that my performance isn't matching my attitude. They're reevaluating my trajectory." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. Not because I felt guilty, I didn't, but because watching someone's identity crumble is painful, even when that identity was built on a shaky foundation. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," he said, exhaling hard. "For the first time, I get it. A tiny bit, anyway. What it feels like when your whole worth is tied to what people think you will become instead of who you actually are. And when that starts to slip, you don't know who you are without it." I sat down on my couch, the weight of his words settling around me. "You could have figured that out without trampling me," I said gently. "But I'm glad you're seeing it now. Mom keeps saying we should apologize." He blurted. "Dad says he doesn't know where to start. They're messed up about this, Clow. About you. About them. About everything." "They don't need a perfect speech," I said. "They just need to tell the truth, even if it's ugly." A week later, they did. My parents invited me to meet at a cafe halfway between my place and theirs. They showed up looking 10 years older than I remembered, not from my success, but from finally seeing their own patterns. My mom cried again, but this time she didn't try to make it the whole story. My dad admitted, eyes wet, that he'd been scared of me surpassing him in ways he didn't understand. So it was easier to joke about Ryan's career. They both said the words I hadn't let myself hope for. "We are sorry. We were wrong. We can't undo the years we made you feel like backup. We want to do better, if you'll let us." I didn't melt into their arms. I didn't fix it with one hug. I told them honestly, I appreciate this. I also need time. I don't trust words yet. I need to see what you do. And then I set boundaries. I told them I wasn't their retirement plan. I told them I wouldn't be bailing Ryan out of any bad investments or paying off their house just because I could. I told them if they talked down my nursing career or treated my work like a fluke again, I would leave. They listened, really listened, and over the next year, slowly, painfully, they started to change. They asked me questions about my work and didn't pivot back to Ryan after 30 seconds. They respected when I said I was tired from a shift and couldn't talk. They started catching themselves when they slipped into old patterns. My mom would stop mid-sentence and say, "I'm doing it again, aren't I?" and then correct herself. As for Ryan, he didn't get fired, but his path at the firm leveled out. No more fast track. No more constant praise. He hated it at first. Then he started to separate who he was from what he did. He apologized to me, really apologized, not with excuses or joking deflections. And one day, months after that Christmas, he asked me something that surprised me more than anything else in this whole story. "Do you think," he said, "you'd ever let me intern or work at something you build? Not as your brother?" Just as some guy starting over, I thought about it for a long second. "Maybe," I said, "if you're okay with starting at the bottom and being taught by people who aren't impressed by your last name." He laughed, but there was humility in it this time. "Fair. Here's what I learned from all of this, and what I'd want anyone watching to take away. Family favoritism isn't just unfair. It's a slow kind of harm. It tells one kid they're never enough, and another that they're only enough when they're shining. It makes the ignored child doubt their worth, and the golden child terrified of falling. Standing up for yourself in that system isn't selfish. It's survival. Setting boundaries with your parents isn't disrespectful. Sometimes it's the only way to break a pattern that would otherwise pass down to the next generation, and your value does not start when your family finally sees it. It has been there the whole time. My parents ignoring me for years didn't erase my worth. It just delayed the moment they had to face it. Our team at Revenge Red is dedicated to crafting meaningful, emotionally rich stories that resonate with real-life struggles. We promise that these are fictional stories, created purely to share valuable lessons and positive educational messages with our viewers. This script highlights the educational value of self-worth, emotional boundaries, and the long-term impact of family favoritism. It encourages viewers to reflect on mental health, healthy communication, and the importance of recognizing every person's potential. Through this story, we hope people learn to build more respectful, understanding, and supportive relationships in their own lives.